I'm really proud of the main team in particular, and of course my academy guys. I can't not be proud of them based on the year that they've had. But I'm really proud of the main team in terms of defying expectations and making sure that people understand that this is a team that can take games off of anyone. This is a team that is put on the map and is able to be very aggressive and be very effective when they come together. And so, they were a game off second place, could have had the bye, could have went to Oakland over C9, right? This is a team that can take names if you're not careful, and I really like that we've defied expectations and carried that reputation. And I think players, with previously bad reputations, Santorin on like H2K and whatnot, were able to effectively show that they are good players, and with the right team and staff behind them, that they can do very well for themselves.
This is Azento from Esports Heaven, and I have here with me Invert from FlyQuest. Now, you are the assistant coach, or are you the head coach of?
Well, I'm the head coach of Academy, and I was out on stage today to help out the main team in their playoff push.
Okay, so how do you feel about the change with you being allowed on stage now to help out St. Vicious?
I think it's pretty interesting change. Some teams will adapt differently and kind of figure out if it's the right strategy for them, because some teams may have a very top-down hierarchical system that there's only one coach and that person imposes a certain amount of authority and doesn't need help. But in the LCK, we've seen groups of coaches actually helping players out in their booths, and I think this change kind of is a similar system that NA is trying to create and adapt. And the assistant coach is there for many things. It's just based on what a team needs, or if they even need it in the first place. So the fact that it's optional is also helps with that. So.
Okay, so let's talk about the game against 100 Thieves. You guys were unfortunately defeated 0-3, but a lot of fans have questions, and even the commentators had questions about the draft and how in game 1 and 2 it was identical drafts. And typically when a team wins, they're like, okay, I'm cool with that draft, like let's do it again. But when a team loses, people start to question, why did FlyQuest choose the same draft?
Yeah. So if you look at the draft again, there was a difference, a change in it. So they actually banned Azir instead, which was something that we were angling to pick up. So actually what happened was when they banned the Azir, it actually fundamentally changed like the way that we wanted to approach that draft, and it ended up having to be the same because it was kind of the best possible pick given the situation. So that's why on our end the draft was roughly the same, but on their end they actually changed the draft, so the draft was not the same.
Okay, so
because they altered one ban.
So then is your draft phase mostly predicated on what they're going to ban? Because a lot of people were looking at, say, JJ's champion pool, and they're like, okay, well, he plays Tom, he plays Braum, he plays Alistair, that's really about it. So were you concerned at all about him getting banned out within the draft phase and then working around that?
No, we are very confident in JJ's champion pool. Tom and Braum were just stuff that they let us play and he consistently performed on. And even today, the Alistar game, game 2 especially, he saw a lot of good angles and actually won the lane for us through those aggressive trades. So, even his Shen game, he was pretty spectacular on Shen, got topside rolling, got bot side, baited out recon ultis like constantly. We have no concerns over his champion pool, so that wasn't really like a huge issue throughout the series in terms of the draft. The main issue was the way that we played into the draft of 100 Thieves. So like I mentioned in the kind of sideline interview with Ovally, 100 Thieves obviously drafts for the 5v5. They're just, I don't know what it is, they just like cannot play to their side lanes at all. They're just always grouping and always trying to group. So we tried to exploit that through three team compositions, technically two, because two of them were the same, that relied on a good amount of split push pressure through like roaming to the Kaisa lane in games 1 and 2 with Talia and Nocturne, which was could be an effective strategy if emphasized correctly, and in game 3 with the 1-3-1 with Camille and Rise. So, game 1 and 2, we, through those different Herald fights and kind of grouping together, we played into a 100 Thieves team comp, whereas if you saw in game 3 when we actually executed a split push properly or a trail properly, we were like, closer to winning with that identity and with that style. So when we refocused and created those opportunities, the game was way easier than it was previously. And again, 100 Thieves just plays 5v5 and that's what they do. And so I have a question about, I guess, the draft and sort of your philosophy on the draft, because my personal one or FlyQuest?
Well, just FlyQuest in general, because it seemed as though there was this barrier of execution, and I talked with St. Vicious about that specific topic too, about how do you juggle barrier of execution for a draft versus drafting just something very simple that the team can function on. Like a perfect example is, former SKT back in the day, they drafted something like a Rumble, and then they didn't have any CC. So just looking at that, it's very hard to execute. So what is FlyQuest's whole ideology on that? Because the draft was also criticized about that too with the Nocturne pick.
Sure. So what is the question again?
Oh, well, it's about barrier of execution and how with the Nocturne pick, a lot of people say that you need to get that champion snowballing, or else you're probably going to lose the game because the initiation and everything, and just playing Nocturne in team fights is very difficult. So you're kind of on a timer in a sense. So what do you think about the barrier of execution, especially with, say, a Nocturne pick?
Sure. I mean, if you're playing for team fights, you probably either need to snowball the Nocturne and then do that, or you don't play for team fights, right? And that's kind of what the last answer was as well, is, we drafted two comps that were about split pushing and about creating pressure in a side lane and trailing that side lane. So in game, we never wanted team fight, right? And what fundamentally happened is we created situations for ourselves where we decided to team fight. And that is what lost us the game more so than the actual draft itself. There's obviously a higher barrier of execution to playing in the side lanes rather than grouping up. But we thought because 100 Thieves is so familiar with grouping, and so this summer in particular not very adept at effective split pushing, that we could exploit that, right? And unfortunately for us, we couldn't execute, and as a result, things happen how they happen. So, I guess to answer the question, like, yes, we drafted Nocturne, and yes, they picked tanks into Nocturne. In game 1, that Nocturne did get snowballing, got triple kill bot off of a very effective and intuitive play by Santorin, but we didn't, after the fact, didn't execute our team composition correctly. And so going into game 2, when we realized, okay, this is how we actually should play the team composition, we fell back on those old habits and then did the same thing. So we were like, okay, let's do it with a different style. And then it almost worked out.
So I know a lot of fans are probably going to be questioning it now just because of results-based analysis, but why wasn't maybe Meteos subbed in instead of Santorin? And that's not to say that Santorin did a bad job at all at jungling. I thought he did pretty good, but what was kind of the reasoning of not subbing in Meteos?
The team played basically exclusively with Lucas, with Santorin. So even though, Meteos is a fantastic player, I've worked with him directly, great leader, great person to help other people out. If a team's not practicing with a certain player, it's really just not effective for the team to use that player. And that's the long and short of it. It has nothing to do with skill difference or with, champion proficiency or anything like that. It's just, Meteos has a specific style of play, and you need to practice with him to do that, to execute that style, and the main team was not practicing with him. So again, not a knock on anyone in particular. Just, Santorin is a great player in his own right as well. Third team all LCS jungler. Very effective this split. So that's why it panned out as it did.
So since you're the coach for the academy squad as well too, I imagine you're pretty intimate with JJ and his play style and his champion pool.
Yeah.
So tell me, how have you kind of fundamentally raised JJ to his level now, and how he was accepted into the main squad?
Yeah, so Juan originally started as a jungler when I worked with him, and then role swapped to support. And so I worked with him ever since he started his career at support. And at first, it's about getting him to understand why teams make certain decisions the way they do around support and jungle, and that was a large part of collegiate, having him work directly with someone in the bot lane and then work directly with his windows and his own ability to kind of call situations. That's why he was the shot caller of the team, the collegiate team that we worked together on. But even further than that, in Spring Split, he was always playing those initiators, right? He was always the person starting the fight, because when he had the go button, he was able to call things more effectively, right? So that's how kind of I raised him, and he was very vocal and very talkative, and that moved him up to the main team because he communicated so well with the rest of the players. And then Saint took that player and did a really good job with teaching him a different style of play, right? The kind of style that you're professing about Tom Kench, Braum, that kind of stuff that's more disengage oriented and more focused on protecting carries in team fights. So I guess that's kind of how I worked with him, and how Saint picked up from where I left off, and made Juan a better player. He's able to conduct these two styles very efficiently, and I think if he has another split in his belt, especially with playoff experience and that hunger after losing, that he can do very well for himself.
That's a feels good story.
I hope so.
That's also kind of one of the perfect transitions of going from a jungler to a support, because it's often said that the jungler and the support need to work together in order to do like ward coverage or invades and stuff. So that's
the fact that he knows how to do both, and that he's gotten challenger on many different accounts in many different seasons on both roles. Really helps him kind of figure things out and make the right decision. So.
Okay. Well, do you have any closing thoughts after this series and kind of after the main season for FlyQuest?
Yeah, I do have a few. I mean, this year everyone kind of, especially in summer, wrote off FlyQuest as this kind of blasé, like.
I did.
No one thinks they'll do much, but I'm really proud of the main team in particular, and of course my academy guys. I can't not be proud of them based on the year that they've had. But I'm really proud of the main team in terms of defying expectations and making sure that people understand that this is a team that can take games off of anyone. This is